his tune is changing. Here's Trump talking with reporters at the New York Times about his faltering effort to reform health care.
I'm not in here 6 months. And they'll say, Trump hasn't fulfilled his agenda. You know what I'm saying to myself? Well, wait a minute. I'm here for a very short period of time. Very narrow path, winding this way. You think you have it, and then you lose 4 on the other side because you gave it. It is a brutal process. And it was for the Democrats in all fairness.
With me now are Jason Johnson, politics editor at The Root and an MSNBC contributor, and Carl Leubsdorf, the former Washington bureau chief for the Dallas Morning News, who laid out a devastating appraisal of Trump's first 6 months in a Dallas Morning News op-ed earlier this week. And Mr. Leubsdorf, I'm going to go with you on this first. Give us your very quick assessment of Donald Trump's first 6 months in office.
Well, you know, you mentioned all of the issues that make it seem that Washington is gridlocked and not much is going on. But in fact, a lot's going on. The agencies are doing a lot of things, and to my mind, most of them bad. You got the Justice Department reversing itself on voter rights, and the EPA letting people dump sludge into streams, and all sorts of things like that.
And what of all of those, that sort of potpourri of things, do you think is the most alarming?
Well, actually, I think the most alarming is the way the president has demeaned the presidency and is trying to demean government itself. And you, you wrote this piece for the Dallas News. Do people in Texas think that? Because there's a sense when you look at the polls that there are sort of two worlds that look at Donald Trump, you know, so from sort of across the street from each other and have nothing in common, and that in the world of Trump's supporters, this is all great. Well, the two worlds in Texas also. Our paper, which is a traditionally conservative paper, endorsed Hillary Clinton, the first Democrat they'd endorsed since 1936. And the response to my column has really been interesting. I would have expected to get about a 50-50 response, especially on the response from Texas, and it's been overwhelmingly favorable. The emails are running about 10 to 1, and virtually everything on Twitter has been positive.
Wow, very.
The Trump supporters are either stopped reading the Dallas Morning News or you know, just holding their breath at this point.
And not watching Shakespeare and all the other things that upset them. Right. Jason Johnson, you know, Donald Trump, one of the things that he has done more than any president is use social media in a very unique way. His tweeting, Mashable talked about how many times Trump has tweeted in office, and essentially he's down to, he's fired off 1,002 tweets at the time of writing that article, which is about 5.5 tweets a day. He tweets about as much as I do, and I tweet a lot. Do you think that that has, in a sense, sort of made this president sort of an open book in a way that presidents maybe should be a little more, or is it alarming to you?
Well, you know, Joy, it depends on who you ask. You know, I would pass up all of this wonderful tweeting by President Trump if he actually, say, opened up press conferences again so we could actually see his spokesperson communicate. You know, if you're a Trump supporter, then he's talking to you constantly. If you're a Trump critic, it's not all that beneficial, because we've noticed what he tends to tweet about is not always what's of the greatest importance to the country. It's people he's angry at. It's people he wants to attack personally. It's certain attacks he wants to complain and attack about Muslims, but ignore when white supremacists murder people in the United States. Not to mention the fact that his tweets have constantly driven his lawyers crazy because he keeps saying things that are going to make it easier to be investigating him. So, you know, is this the future of the presidency? It may be the future of this one, but most other presidents would choose to speak to the American people and not just have a one-way conversation on social media.
Well, I wonder about that, because, you know, Carl did mention the fact that in his view, Trump has undermined the presidency, he's fundamentally sort of denigrated it. Do you think that Donald Trump has done that, and has he made a permanent change to the presidency, for better or worse?
You know, Joy, I don't think anything is permanent yet. It's only been 6 months. I mean, if I were to grade him, I would say, hey, he's got a B+ on the economy. He hasn't managed to screw things up. I give him an A in gym. He spends a lot of time on the golf course. You know, a D in African-American studies, because he clearly didn't know who Frederick Douglass was. I mean, we don't have a full view of what this presidency will be yet. But I will say this. If we go into the fall and some of these governor's elections and things like that are happening in this country, and he still does not have a health care plan, if he has still not figured out how he's going to improve infrastructure, if he keeps having these rally weeks but no policies to go with them, then we can start saying this is a failed presidency. Because with the amount of power that he has in every branch of government, there's no excuse to be as ineffective as Donald Trump has been.
Yeah, and
one thing we should remember, Joy, is that presidency is 4 years. It takes a long time for things to develop. I've been here since 1963, and I've seen the Democrats in control. I've seen the Republicans in control. I was here for the Nixon impeachment. It took forever for that to unfold. So nothing is permanent.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, one of the other things, of course, that Donald Trump has done is move the country much closer to the Putin view of the way that the U.S. foreign policy, et cetera, could be run, sort of dismantled much of the State Department's initiatives. You know, how does that change strike you? Because a lot of the country actually doesn't mind that, doesn't care about it.
Yeah, I mean, the disturbing thing is that the most recent polls show that fewer Republicans actually believe the Russians meddled in our election now than in April. They seem to be rallying around him more. Look, I think this is the single most problematic thing in this extremely problematic administration. Anyone who loves the United States of America, I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, should be concerned about a president who does not care about the integrity of elections, should be concerned about a president who seems fundamentally incapable of establishing good relationships with foreign leaders, a president who seems desperate to be part of the cool kids in the honeycomb hideout with Vladimir Putin and other dictators, and is less concerned with long-term economic and military allies. I think that is the long-term damage that has been done by this presidency. It took George Bush 8 years to do something this bad. Donald Trump's been doing a terrible job in the first 6 months.
And Carl, I guess what we're waiting to find out is whether red state voters will eventually care about it. But we don't have time. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We'll have to bring you back to talk about that. Carl Leubsdorf, Jason Johnson, thank you very much. Appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is all for All In this evening. I'll be back here tomorrow. And you can catch me every weekend at 10 a.m. Eastern on AM Joy. The Rachel Maddow Show starts right now. Good evening, Rachel.
Joy, I laughed out loud when your guest said that the president should get an A in gym. I was like, you know what? I had not thought about that.
I thought you were going to say the honeycomb hideout, because that was my highlight.
The honeycomb hideout
all I needed.
just made me hungry. But thank you. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.